Hi, welcome to Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chit chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. We are Josh, Richard, and Laura, and today we are discussing overpopulation. So grab your English tea or your Costco flat of Frappuccinos and join us as we talk about procreating ourselves out of a planet. Hey, we're just following God's commandments after all, aren't we? This is Skeptic Hangout, Overpopulation.
I didn't know if anybody wanted to jump in besides me because I keep jumping in first.
No,
Okay.
yeah, I can. I try not to be the first one to jump in since I just did the intro, but it's okay.
Well, I just didn't know if Richard wanted to because I keep doing it, but I'm okay to keep
No,
doing it.
take you take it. You take it. I've
It's
done it
2
for
a.m. for
months.
Richard. It's his first 2 a.m. shift, so give him a break.
All right. Overpopulation is a topic that I think we can fall down some avenues on because you can definitely overthink it. I know China has some what we would probably think is inhumane ways of dealing with overpopulation where you can only have one child. I think it's still only one child. And then usually because of that, they're kind of like seeing men as the preferred choice of child and women as almost like a burden on the family because you can't
Yeah.
carry on the name with that. And like I understand where they're coming from in that if you're overpopulated, it's you need to have less children, but making enforcing that on a family is very difficult, and it also makes weird societal standards like what I talked about with the women children almost coming off, or the girl children almost coming off as inferior children, like a disappointment.
Yeah, yeah. So that is where when we talk about handling overpopulation, like what to do about it, I am all for I know Richard's favorite thing to say is like education. Yeah, educate people and maybe promote not having big families. Like our cultures push and push and push and push to have these big families, mostly for religious purposes.
Yeah.
And so if we can reverse that conditioning and that thinking to, well, if you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. You'd be surprised how many people choose not to have children when there's not the cultural pressure to do so, right? Like there's quite a few. It's getting more and more popular now for people to stop having children by choice. But yet they're still pressured by their friends and family and communities like when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids, right? Um if we reverse that pressure and just promote it and not putting negative pressure on those who do decide to have kids, I think we're going to have natural declines without needing to have laws.
Well, it used to seem like it's like your destiny. You have to get married by a certain age. You have to have kids by a certain age,
Right.
and like not just one. Your parents want like a bunch of grandkids to be taken care of, and you're also supposed to go forth and spread the religion. So like the more you can build your pyramid
Scheme.
scheme
Yeah.
of family, the better it is for whatever religion you're trying to populate. So like, but now as our culture's changing, like there's more of an emphasis on people's autonomy and stuff like that.
Mhm.
There's less of a focus on everybody needing to have kids. Like there's a whole movement of people that are just like happy that without kids they can go on vacations whenever they want. There's nothing. It's less looked down upon, at least so within our generation. Richard's generation probably is getting okay about it too, maybe. But there's less pressure on it, and it's mostly doing good because I think the way they handled it before, and it may be something that'll come, it's still probably inevitable, is I think a lot of times the overpopulation was taken out through wars, and we haven't been pushing for wars
Right.
as much. So that's how they culled the people. Is like, oh, we'll send the young, poorer people out to die, and that'll take care of our overpopulation problem.
Not just that, but there were natural eliminations like famine and disease and war is probably a huge one. Like that's a good way to like wipe out a lot of like very
I
um
should have thought of disease, what with COVID killing so many people. That's the way to get rid of, like, it's not a good way. It's not, I'm not putting a positive on it, but that's the way that
no, but that's what people have
overpopulation has
literally
gone
said.
down.
Like the people who were against like masks and vaccination and stuff is they're like, well, we're overpopulated anyway. We need to weed out the population. I agree with you that is not the way to do it.
That's callous
But
and gross.
It's
Yeah, and
completely heartless.
ironically, it's usually those who suffer from
Yeah.
not wearing masks. They're the ones who usually get weeded out. Those who don't get vaccinated and don't wear the masks.
Yeah, interesting
Exactly.
how that works. But yeah, I'm interested in what your guys' thoughts are. Not so much what we should do about overpopulation, but like your thoughts on overpopulation in general. Like, do you think that our planet is currently overpopulated or heading towards overpopulated? And why? Like, what do you guys think are the reasons that you would say yay or nay?
Well, I don't have the statistics, but I do know that I have heard that our population does slowly increase as time goes by. And I do think that's going to be a problem eventually. Like, we're taking out the resources like crazy. California, our water is like shit right now.
Mhm.
And it's not as much because of overpopulation as that we're letting companies take our resources and stuff like that. But it also doesn't help that there are so many people packed into this tiny area. Like LA is overpopulated. It's like there are states that don't have as many people in it as we have it out in this LA area. And there's only so many jobs for people to go. There's only so many houses to go. The job market, or not the job market, the housing market is crap right now because there's so many people. And even though they keep increasing the prices on the houses so much, they can always find somebody desperate enough to take it up. So it's getting to the point where it's almost unsustainable to live out here because of overpopulation and other horrible capitalist issues. But I think that's one of the reasons why they're able to milk us so bad for it, is because the population's so dense with people that they can sucker somebody into any type of housing that they want to do.
Yeah, I think the loss of resources is a huge thing, and of course, it's not the first time in history that it's happened. The biggest kind of until modern technology came along, the biggest kind of cause of deforestation was during the Bronze Age, where people suddenly learned how to the Bronze Age led in a huge kind of cultural migration of knowledge. And it was also around the same time of the first Enlightenment, where in 2500 BC, where all these cultures in Greece and in India and in China, all these great ideas were coming out with like Buddhism and Jainism and Confucius and all the Greek philosophers. And that Bronze Age led to a massive deforestation.
Yeah.
Because of the kind of the need to power these great furnaces that they were using to smelt the bronze and stuff. So it's not a modern thing. We tend to think of like resources going as a modern thing. It's not. The change we have now is that we've progressed to such an extent that we're all living longer and we're all generally healthier. And
Right.
that coupled with the taking the resources is what's causing the problems. It's our benefit for health and for longevity is kind of the thing that's causing our own demise, if you like, our own problems, because there aren't enough resources, or there are enough resources if they were shared out evenly, but
Or handled appropriately.
yeah, but there aren't enough resources to sustain the way we currently live.
I love that you both. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on. I've done. Finished.
I love that you both touched on resources versus the size of the population, because that's something that I think is a big misnomer that I hear a lot is, well, there's plenty of room. Like, we still have so much room to expand into and blah, 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 blah. There's so much of the planet that's unused. And it's almost like people think that, like, in order to have an overpopulation of ants, every single square foot has to be filled entirely with ants to the point where you can't even move. And that's what an ant overpopulation is. And that's wrong. Like, overpopulation is nothing more complicated than just the number of life forms exceeds the amount of resources needed to keep them alive and to sustain those numbers over generations, right? And what we don't understand is that as of right now, yeah, we're able to
Do it.
somehow make do, But we are also in a very, very privileged position where we don't understand how much of the human population is living below what we think of as poverty. So if
Yeah.
you're like a white American or a white person in the UK, you probably, good chances are you have no idea what real poverty even is, right? And the people that you've seen and labeled as being poor are living better, healthier lives than the actual world's poor. And so when we talk about overpopulation, I really think the first thing and the most important thing we should talk about isn't our numbers or whether or not we're covering enough square miles, but it's our resource use and how we're using our resources. And
Yeah,
if we're
if you
not
have a look at, sorry, go on.
no, I was just gonna end it with if you're not looking at feeding a human population as feeding an entire human population, then you're missing the point.
Yeah, and I agree entirely. And I think if you have a look at the Earth from space, something very interesting happens because we kind of think of it as being green on blue, but like the typical idea of the globe. But if you actually have a look at satellite images of Earth, there's a huge part of the US which is kind of desert. There's a huge part of Africa which is desert. There's a huge part of the kind of Euro-Russian continent which is desert.
Mhm.
And those resources are geographically placed. It's not just a case that we live on a green planet with, mounds and mounds of forests and food-bearing savannas and stuff. It's just not the case. A lot of the Earth's tundra, frozen tundra, a lot of the Earth's desert, and these population areas are the problem. It's not just the fact that there is so much land and so many people. It's usable land and resource-rich land, which is the problem, and that's usually tightly controlled by
What?
people who are making lots of money off it.
Yeah. And Josh brought up water. Oh my gosh, if there's a resource that we think we have an unlimited amount of, it's fresh water. And we just
Yeah.
don't have the water that we need for the world's population in order to live healthily and sustain it.
And,
Josh,
And
what are your thoughts?
and this seems like a problem that they keep kicking the can up the curb, just like with global warming and stuff like that, and which actually overpopulation probably helps contribute to that somewhat as well. That it's not our problem now, it's the future generations problem. It's something that we need to be thinking of now. We can't just like our grandkids are going to be living on Mars someday. That'll solve overpopulation. There's probably going to be a substantial throat dried out, a substantial issue that takes care of these numbers, and is not, I don't think it's going to be something that's pretty. I think it's going to be a pretty horrible situation for everybody that gets us out of these numbers. It could lead to another disease, just like we get packed in so close to where diseases can spread easier under overpopulated conditions. It could just be people like starving to death because the resources eventually can't reach to everybody. The amount of farmland that takes to house one family worth of food is a shitload more than people think it is. You can't like raise that. You can't like build a farm in your backyard and sustain yourself. You need property in order to like sustain your family on farmland. And we're counting on other people to do that without even thinking about how far their resources can extend, because the numbers getting bigger and bigger every year. It's another thing that's so weird that they're going against birth control now and abortions now, when right now adding more kids that aren't wanted into eating up resources seems like the exact opposite of what we should be doing.
Yeah, it's almost like an irresponsible argument, huh?
I think touching on water, just to finish on the kind of water point, Britain's got quite a healthy water supply, and even like here in a few years ago there was a period, and it was only a period of about 2 weeks, and this is how quickly things can change, where literally they were showing satellite images on the news of Britain, because all the grass was turning yellow because we had a heat wave that was so much of a heat wave that it was like drying everything up. All the reservoirs were drying up.
Wow.
All the gardens were drying up because we weren't allowed to water them. There was a hose pipe ban on to try to keep water at a minimum usage, and it doesn't take long for this stuff to strike. And we've got quite a plentiful water supply compared to a lot of places, and it just shows how quickly things can change and how, like, climate change wise, and how vital water is, fresh water is, which is it's the most vital resource we have on the planet.
I do wanna throw out there, and this is more in case I misspoke, but I do wanna say that, like, I don't know the statistics, like Josh said earlier, about whether or not we actually are currently overpopulated. I can make suspicions based on, like, changes in, not just global warming, but when you have, like, huge tracts of farmland that are literally destroying the natural ecosystem of an area to the point where then they have to leave that farmland alone for so long and can't use it anymore and things like that. We're talking about resources at least eventually being used up. So I just kind of wanted to throw out that, like, I don't know the statistic about whether we're currently overpopulated or just heading towards it. I mean, scientifically, according to how many resources we have, I just suspect we are based on, like, the worldwide poverty level and how many people do without things that we take for granted every single day. I
Overpopulation for somebody living comfortably, like I'm living relatively comfortably, for me might be different for overpopulation for people on lower end and lower means. So like there might be like a statistic where they say this is what overpopulation is, but overpopulation could mean something else for people in different classes and who have different resources that they're able to obtain. Because the
Yeah.
more people are, there less resources there are to go around. The more people are going to find themselves like having to like get multiple families into a home, or even not able to get a home anymore because the housing market is down, or the again the water isn't enough for them. Like overpopulation I don't think just means like for the entire planet. Once the entire planet is screwed, we're overpopulated.
It could
It
be
could be,
local. Yeah.
yeah, local overpopulation.
Yeah, and also, like, it's interesting that if so, let's say, hypothetically speaking, we have the ability to feed the entire world and to have the entire world have basic amenities like housing and water and stuff. Then there'd be, like, a really solid argument that, like, we're not overpopulated because we're able to provide for everybody. Now I don't think that the fact that we don't provide for everybody automatically means we're overpopulated. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, at that point, whether or not we're overpopulated becomes a moot point because the population we have now we're not caring for, whether we're underpopulated or overpopulated or just populated, right? I think that it becomes almost like a non sequitur, like we're focusing on the wrong thing. Why don't we focus instead on the people who we have right here, right now, who aren't getting their needs met?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we definitely should be going for, instead of pushing for more families and stuff like that, we should be pushing for better healthcare, better jobs for people, better just better living conditions overall, instead of pushing like we need to get as many Americans out of vaginas as possible this year. Like that's the most humane way I can see of not necessarily solving it, but like slowing down the problem, because eventually it's going to solve itself, and it hopefully we can, it's either going to solve itself or we're going to come up with a humane way of solving it. And right now it seems like we're not doing any steps to do the humane way and like helping each other out and getting past this hurdle. It seems
Mhm.
like we're just waiting for it to get to that point where it's a real problem for enough Americans, or enough people in the world for them to care about trying to find a solution.
Like you said, if
yeah.
it doesn't interrupt your way of life, you know?
And I think what one solution, because traditionally, of course, and I mean, I would going to say traditionally, so it's limited to the past. Now as well, wars are generally fought over resources.
Yep.
That tends to be
Yeah.
the kind of underlying cause of most wars. The control of resource of one form or another. I think we should put something aside as individuals to try and help those less fortunate than us, those who haven't been born with the privilege we've been born with, to kind of share the wealth we have to whatever extent we are able to kind of do that little bit just to help people. Let's change the culture from trying to control resource to sharing resources in whatever. And everything starts with us individuals, because it's very easy to sit here and say, well, we should be doing more, the world should be doing more, but not doing anything yourself about it.
Right.
And,
Right. So there's a question too, is where's like the talks about sustainability. So you have so many people arguing about well, we're not really overpopulated because X, Y, and Z, right? But or we are overpopulated, now what do we do about it? But my question is, like, so we have, these incredibly huge factory farms, and a lot of the agriculture that's grown, like plants that are grown, are actually grown for animal feed. And we don't even realize that the majority of our wheat and corn and stuff goes towards animal feed so that they can feed the little 8-ounce steak that I eat for dinner. So it's an incredible misuse of our resources.
Not
And
to mention
so,
like restaurants, they end up throwing out the food most of the time instead
yeah,
of giving it to like homeless shelters or people that could do it. That's resources that are readily available, but because of the capitalist society that we live in, they're going down the trash because they can't make money giving it to homeless
right.
shelters.
Because I need a salad that's 4 times bigger than what I can possibly fit in my stomach, but then that food needs to be put in the trash because we can't give it to somebody else who needs it. Yeah, it's a really disgusting sort of system that we have. And so, yeah, I guess that's just my point, is like, why don't, when we talk about a farmer who wants to make a living and make, millions of dollars off of his beef, his awareness is just not on sustainability. It's on, what do I need to produce right now, this year, to make my dollar amount. And I'm not saying all farmers are like that or that nobody cares about sustainability. But culturally, I think if we're gonna talk about whether or not overpopulation is important, why don't we talk also in about what our practices are? It was, I don't know, it's just something that Richard touched
yeah,
on that I
we
think
should. I
bears.
think we should do, and I think the majority of conversations I have with vegans, and me as a non-vegan, tends to be correcting the perception that I'm totally against these big, massive super farms. I think we should reduce farming, and that would in turn reduce meat consumption, and it would in turn put the cost of meat up, and it would in turn make us healthier people, and it would in turn in help to reduce the resource loss on the planet.
Yeah.
These are all connected things, and you don't have to go to the extremes of being. One of the major arguments for veganism is that the loss of resource and the way food is uh, farmed to start with.
Mhm.
And I totally in agreement that the way we do it now is wrong. You don't have to go to the extreme of a vegan to see that and to understand that. And that is one cultural change we could make as individuals, where we source our food from, and trying to encourage better farming.
But you did mention like, and I'm not arguing against your idea. I'm just trying to put some nuance in there. You did mention the fact that the doing that reduced kind of farming and getting away from the gross factory farming and giving them better living conditions, that does increase the cost of the meat.
Yeah.
And that's why, we already live in a country, I don't know how it is over there, but over here, eating healthier is expensive.
Yeah,
And
it is here as well. Yeah.
yeah, and bringing up those kinds of costs is a big deal for low income families. So like there's always like a give and take with anything done in the right direction. Like, I do care that animals are treated fairly and that they're using less resources, but I also understand that families do rely on these cheaper cuts of meat and stuff like that in order to survive. So like there's always a give and pull everywhere. And I don't know if like that's a solution that helps. I don't know if it's a solution for everything.
So I
I
have
think
to
it's
push
a
back.
solution that. Sorry, go on, Laura.
I just have to push back a tiny bit about the expensive thing because, yes, if you're talking about fully organic or buying only from local farms who don't do the big factory farming, then yeah, the cost of eating healthy becomes quite a bit more expensive. But if you're talking about just eliminating your meat consumption and processed food consumption and incorporating more like whole foods and more vegetables, and I'm not saying you have to go vegan or even vegetarian, but just reducing the amount of meat you eat actually makes the average plate cheaper, right? So our dinners, when we do something like salads or like a vegetable stew or something like that, are substantially cheaper than when we do our meals, uh, especially involving red meats like tri-tip or something like that. I mean, chicken's pretty cheap, but you could, as a family, it takes mindfulness though. It takes education, and it takes knowing what you mean when you say cheaper. Because like, sure, Twinkies are cheap, but, so is a bushel of bananas. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's cheaper to eat meat or to eat unhealthy, or that it's, more expensive to eat healthy. I think it's what we think of as healthy when we think it has to be organic or it has to be meat from a local farm where they charge twice as much per pound, you know?
Yeah,
Then
and let me just clarify that I was
yeah,
talking about if we reduce this globally
yeah.
and not just on an individual basis now, but if we actually reduced it globally, those would be the results of it.
Yeah. Meat is not that spectacular for us to be addicted to and eating all the time. Traditionally, we ate meat a lot rarer and we were a lot healthier. Healthier in terms of, I shouldn't say that because without healthcare, we were less healthy. But I'm talking about in terms of the vitamins and stuff that we got from the foods we were eating.
But we ate a lot less meat as well.
That's what I'm saying.
We
Meat was rarer. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We can eat less meat in our diets. And if that's the only thing we eliminate, A, it gets cheaper, not more expensive, and B, we get healthier. And we don't have to be vegetarians. Just don't eat meat 3 meals a day.
I may just not be connecting with that because that sounds like a horrible
He's like,
lifestyle to me.
I need my eggs for breakfast, my turkey sandwich for lunch, and I need my steak dinner.
Yeah, I like I'm probably not coming from a logical standpoint, but like everything you're saying just like makes me want to scream right now, not like in a good way, but like in a horror movie.
I was just going to
He's
say, trust the
cringing
guy
right
from
now.
the horror movie podcast who's into blood and guts to want to eat more meat.
That's why he watches horror movies. Those don't scare him, but the thought of taking meat out of his diet does. And I have to apologize though, because I feel like I've gotten up on a high horse on this show about meat and whether or not it's good or bad. I just think we could do with reducing it without substantially
I
hurting
was
it.
just impressed that you got up on that high horse for so long and it didn't kick you off. So good on you.
I like my high horse likes me.
I don't. The thing is, it is a good point. It is a very good point, and it is connected to resources and overpopulation.
Oh, that was
So there,
it.
Josh. So there.
I thought Richard had a little bit more resources to overpopulation. Okay, that's the end of it. Then.
Mic drop.
This isn't a vegan episode or an eat less meat or
No, we've done
just
one of them
Josh
already.
episode. This is overpopulation. Like where else are we seeing overpopulation? Like what other kind of issues are we coming out with this? Because we seem to like want to get all the meat eaters and throw them under the bus. But
Well,
where else can we?
You touched on it earlier when you said that there's a big thing in the US now about the abortion thing
Yeah.
being overturned, and religion it seems to be pushing very much this idea of having more children and kind of populating the world, and as Josh said earlier, to go out and spread the word and follow God's good instructions.
Well, you did an episode on sex education recently, and that's a good way of slowing overpopulation because if you know how to put on a condom or you know to take the pill and there's like no stigma on it, then that's going to help slow overpopulation. So we're not getting more unwanted babies. And guess what? That avoids the whole abortion issue too, if they have a little bit of sex education.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Definitely.
that right there, I know we're coming to the end of the show, but I think that right there nails it in terms of what do we do about overpopulation. I don't like the idea of governments telling people what they can do with their families, whether or not they can have kids. That makes me incredibly uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I agree with what you say about the outcomes for women and the negative outcomes there. I think if I do still feel like no matter what, legal abortions need to be available to people just because there's always going to be other reasons. And I don't, even if it's rare and it
even
continues to become more
if
rare,
there's 10 people
but
in the world,
that,
that
right.
one pregnant woman, she can get rid of that baby if she
Like,
wants
just
to
let
for her
those 10
body.
people. Yeah, absolutely. So this is by no means an argument against abortion, but I do think that if you're gonna talk about overpopulation, promoting healthy non-child lifestyles, not saying that it's better than having children, but just making it on par with having children. Make it okay, socially
Yeah,
acceptable. Give good sex education. On top of that, I would say healthcare in terms of free or readily available birth control because
with no stigma about getting it. Just
no
like
stigma. And I'm
get it,
sorry,
make it as easy as
no
possible.
limitations like if you're under 18, you have to have parents' permission. No
Oh,
limitations like if you're married, you need your husband's permission.
oh,
Fuck all of that. If someone wants access to birth control, they should have access to birth control.
Yeah, that's one thing I think in Britain, I don't know what it's like now because I'm no longer young, but when I
You're
was
out of
young,
touch.
that's one thing that we did have access to. You know, if as a teenager, if I wanted to go and have sex, I could go and access free condoms. You know, there was a place to do that as a minor, uh, and you know that should be something that is freely and readily available to everyone. I hope it still is. I have this kind of vain hope that you know my country is moving forward rather than backwards, and that's still a thing. But yeah, it's you know free birth control, like you know as we talked about in the sex education episode, kids are going to experiment.
Yeah.
Let's educate and make it as safe and as for them to do so, and give them the choice to kind of take birth control and experiment without having to have the consequences and having stigma attached to it by some religious nut who fucking wants to tell people that you know if you have sex you've got to have a baby because some 2,500-year-old book says so.
Or that the only purpose of having sex is to have a baby. Yeah. That would be my last point for reducing overpopulation and fixing some of the world's problems is to continue to combat bad religious ideas. Because a lot of our bad cultural practices come from us being stuck in bad religious ideas. But I know we're coming to the end of the show, so I want to give Josh the opportunity to get his last thoughts in as well.
no, I think I'm right on par with you on that one, Liv. Promote healthy sex, promote safe sex, promote. Yeah, I know, like Planned Parenthood, you could get contraceptives easy at no matter what age you are. Although that's going to depend on what state you're in with the way things are going.
And who your
But
parents are sometimes.
yeah, well, I didn't have sex until I was in my early 20s, so it wasn't really a problem for me. But well, it was a problem for me, but it wasn't a problem that I was actively.
We understand, Josh. We
that I was
understand.
actively
No
having.
need to clarify.
But so
I've been a teenager too. That would have definitely been a problem for me.
so I like healthy education there. I can't get behind your whole backing down on the meat thing. I know that it seems like the healthy way, but I have a hard time telling people how they have to eat, and that's probably me being selfish. But I couldn't tell somebody that they couldn't have their 3 steaks a day and like look myself in the mirror anymore. So
Oh, see, that's where I'll agree with you. I think it all has to be personal choice. It has to be education and personal choice. I don't think that
Education, not mandation.
Yes. Yeah. And I think people will tend towards better choices the better educated they are. And if they choose not to, then that's fine. That's their choice. Josh.
they're gonna fuck the steaks and eat them because that's where their sex education's going, and that's how they're gonna have a good time.
I can't follow that.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it.
Put a steak in it, it's done.
Oh Jesus.
And on that note,
Who invited him on again?
I think this was your idea. I remember telling you I definitely don't want Josh.
I just showed up here. Nobody invited
We logged
me.
in and there he was.
If you
in.
want to follow us, if you want to talk about whether Josh is wrong for his stance on meat, which he is, or comment on anything else that you've heard in this episode, you want to communicate with us, we've got a Facebook discussion group go along to that, and we're there. Interact with us. We'll answer your questions. We'll push back if you want to disagree with us, or maybe we'll agree if you want to disagree with us, depending on your disagreement. We also have a merch store, which I have no idea how to get to because I don't retain that kind of information.
Linktree/skeptic hangout.
It
And I'll
should be in
put a link in the description. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can support us that way. That's currently the only way to support us. And we want to improve the way we do this. We want to get better equipment, better currently using free software to record. Pay for that software, get a better product out of it, improve what we're doing, and we can only do that with your support. So go and buy a t-shirt or a mouse mat or.
You sounded so sad with that. You said it so please buy a t-shirt. They're good t-shirts. They're good merch. Don't come off like big and like, yeah, you want to wear this t-shirt. Don't do this like, please help us out here on Skeptic Hangout. We need you to buy the shirts.
Josh was actually, before he joined the crew, Josh was actually a fan of the show and did buy the merchandise. So kudos to Josh. Do be like Josh.
In every way. Eat lots of meat.
Don't fuck it first, though.
That's up to you.
Lord.
Personal
we
choice.
need to end this episode right now.
And on that note, keep questioning.
Interrogate your beliefs.
Stay skeptical.
And we will see you next time. Thank you.